Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Floating farms, coffee boners, and active perceptions. Plus this day in history with the Morris Worm and our Song of the Day by Dream Ritual on your Morning Monarchy for July 26, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome back to another listener-supported blast of non-commercial alternative media. We are streaming live at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Hey, why don't you do me a favor? Share that link, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. We are streaming Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Pacific time. News, music, and more. And it's Wednesday, it's Hump Day. Welcome to Food World Order. This is the day we talk about food, health, and environment news, and all the stories are brought to you by you using hashtag Food World Order. And a huge thanks to our latest patron, that's John C. He went to patreon.com/Media Monarchy to give us that little bit of money we need to keep going and growing, moving and grooving. If you can give a little, I can give a lot, my friends. Huge thanks. So it is a Food World Order day, and I got a lot of breaking news. So actually, let's just go ahead and dive right into the breaking lamestream news, which does also contain some of our breaking news we are going to talk about that relates to Food World Order. Trump bans transgender people serving in the military. That's probably the biggest news a lot of people are waking up to this morning. Senate Republicans still face narrow path to pass health care bill after procedural victory. Trump pressures Sessions to replace the acting FBI director. Ronald Phillips executed in Ohio, ending their 3-year moratorium, so to speak, on executions. Wasserman Schultz fires IT staffer following fraud arrest. And some of those things will be mixed into our breaking news, so let's glance at it right now. President Donald Trump announced Wednesday a ban on transgender people serving in the military, reversing U.S. policy in a series of tweets. Quote, "After consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any military capacity in the U.S. military. Our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail." Thank you. Trump's announcement came just over a year after former President Barack Obama's then Secretary of Defense Ash Carter lifted a ban on transgender military service, a move that allowed active duty troops to come out of the closet as transgender people. In the year since the ban was repealed, roughly 250 service members have applied to change their gender in the military's personnel system. That's what the Pentagon told the AP back in June. All I can say with stories like this is what I generally say in regards to stories like this. It's pretty much you just go to St. Hicks. Anybody dumb enough to want to serve in the military should be able to do it. One of our other breaking news stories, Imran Awan, A-W-A-N, you know, the Awan brothers. House staffers at the center of a criminal investigation potentially impacting dozens of Democratic lawmakers, has been arrested on bank fraud and is prevented from leaving the country while the charges are pending. A senior House Democratic aide confirmed Awan was still employed by Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz as of Tuesday morning. But David Damron, a spokesman for Wasserman Schultz, later said that Awan was fired on Tuesday. Awan pleaded not guilty on Tuesday to one count of bank fraud during his arraignment in the U.S. District Court for the District of Criminals. Awan is accused of attempting to defraud the Congressional Federal Credit Union by obtaining a $165,000 home equity loan for a rental property, which is against the credit union's policies since it's not the owner's primary residence. Those funds were then included as part of a wire transfer to two individuals in Faisalabad, Pakistan. Awan was arrested at Dulles Airport on Monday evening before boarding a flight to Lahore, Pakistan. His wife, Hina Alvi, had already left the country for Pakistan along with the kids. Federal agents do not believe Alvi has any intention of returning to the U.S., according to a court document. Awan was released Tuesday on a high-intensity supervision program. According to a DOJ spokesman, he must wear a GPS monitor, abide by a curfew of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and cannot leave the 50-mile radius of his Spookville town in Lorton, Virginia. He was also forced to surrender his passports and is scheduled to reappear in court for a preliminary hearing August 21st. Now, our buddy Steve, one of my West by God, Virginia friends, he's pretty much already made the bet that Imran Awan is probably going to, die a suicide in the jail cell. I would maybe take that bet. After a 3-year break, Ohio resumed executions on Wednesday by giving a lethal injection to Ronald Phillips, who was convicted of raping and beating to death his girlfriend's 3-year-old daughter. Phillips, 43, whose execution had been postponed 6 times, was killed with a 3-drug formula that's become popular with states struggling to obtain execution chemicals. And we've talked about those not only on your food, health, and environment issues, but also on your holy hexes. The mix of death and food. It includes a sedative that's been featured in several other executions that did not go as planned, including the last one in Ohio, though there were no reports of complications in Phillips' case from media witnesses. The inmate was very emotional, pool reporter Alan Johnson said, after Phillips was pronounced dead at 10:43 a.m. As Ohio brings back the death penalty. So our last bit of breaking news that I see at the top of the breaking lamestream news that I'll share for you takes us from Ohio and brings us right back here to Oregon as we keep it weird.
When you were in elementary school, chances are you built a baking soda volcano.
But it was probably nothing like this. Check it out. Might not look like much now, but the pipes, scaffolding, and tarps will eventually come together to form what OMSI hopes will be the world's largest baking soda volcano.
Wow.
It stands 34 feet tall, almost twice as tall as your typical giraffe. But in order to get the world record, OMSI has to get a big explosion, too. More than 4 feet, in fact. So they're packing in 66 gallons of vinegar and 50 gallons of a baking soda water mixture.
It's definitely going to be a fantastic explosion and hopefully not too big of a mess, but you know, we've never done this before.
I bet they haven't. It's all part of the featured Pompeii exhibit at the museum right now. The actual explosion will start on Sunday at 3 o'clock right in front of that museum. We'll have a crew there, of course, but the museum plans to do it again on Wednesday at their After Dark event.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, Dave and I do this in the garage every Friday night.
Yeah.
We give it our best.
But we have not gotten to the 66 pounds of baking soda and 50 gallons of vinegar
Not yet.
I am so geeking out on that thing. It's not even.
You are.
That's going to be great.
Okay,
Yes,
you guys,
okay.
let's wrap it up there, newsroom goobers. Sounds like a fantastic use of money, eh? That's the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, OMSI. Our last bit of breaking, developing news heads us right into Food World Order. A McDonald's employee said he was fired after posting a disturbing picture of the ice cream machine at the Louisiana location where he worked. The photo he tweeted quickly went viral, prompting an internet backlash for the fast food giant. The former employee, who preferred to be referred to only as Nick, posted a picture of the ice cream machine's drip tray, which is visibly coated in grime and sticky material. According to HuffPo, Nick says store managers were supposed to clean it, but that he never saw them do when he worked there. He was employed from March to this month. That's probably about the average lifespan of a McDonald's job. This came out of McDonald's ice cream machine. In case y'all were wondering, he captioned his tweet of the photo. Though it hasn't quite hit the major mainstream outlets, the image has been covered by Teen Vogue, of course, now one of the hottest political magazines out there. It's just Teen Vogue, Teen Vogue. Hey, have you heard about anal sex in Teen Vogue? Also Cosmo, and it's been retweeted over 13,000 times, 15,000 likes, and this is posted only 3 hours ago from Carrie Wedler up on Anti-Media. Food Beast observed that the filthy ooze doesn't end up in the ice cream. It's the junk down at the bottom, but you never want to see photos like that coming out of a restaurant. As my buddy Casey would say, it looks pretty nar-nar. I don't even think I would make that my album art today. So let's now dive into our prepared statements using hashtag Food World Order and all the stories we talk about on every morning Monarchy show, whether it's food or world news or technology or weird or media. We tweet out the stories we're going to talk about in about an hour before showtime. Beleaguered Attorney General Jeff Sessions was named as a defendant in a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the Controlled Substances Act as it pertains to cannabis. This comes on the heels of the article from the Weed blog, which is where we're grabbing this from. Of course, everything we say and play will always be included in the show notes. They did a piece about Sessions and his secret weapon against weed in a 90-page complaint, which can be found at the bottom of this article. Again, of course, included in the show notes from the Cannabis. Attorneys representing 5 plaintiffs maintain that the CSA... We've been having some CSA troubles here ourselves with our community-supported agriculture, but in this case, we're talking about the Controlled Substances Act. Attorneys representing 5 plaintiffs maintain that the CSA, in classifying cannabis as a Schedule I drug, is so irrational it violates the U.S. Constitution. In their complaint, plaintiffs demonstrate that the federal government does not and could not possibly believe that cannabis meets the definition of a Schedule I drug, which is reserved for the most dangerous of substances, arguably dangerous heroin, LSD, and mescaline. I would take any of those any day of the week over any of the garbage coming from Big Pharma, but I get where you're coming from. By way of comparison, coke and crystal meth are considered Schedule II drugs and are thus considered less addictive and less dangerous. To be classified under Schedule I, a drug, as you may or may not know, must have high potential for abuse, no medical treatment, can't be tested, or even safely used or been around. The record makes clear that the CSA doesn't make any rational sense, and the federal government knows it, says Michael Hiller, lead counsel in the case. He went on to say that if the feds don't believe in the irrationality of their own statute, it's unconstitutional to enforce it. Among the other claims in the lawsuit are that the CSA-1 was enacted and implemented in order to discriminate against African Americans and to suppress people's First Amendment rights, and 2, violates plaintiffs' constitutional right to travel. Now, our buddy Chef Jake actually just relocated within Washington State and is in Yakima, and he just shared in the chat a picture and some screen grabs of these billboards that went up in Yakima that said, "We don't need meth to have fun. We're cool by default." That's the parody sign. They said, "We don't need weed to have fun. We're cool by default. We're Latino." So targeting the Latino markets to say, you don't have to smoke weed to be cool. As again, the prohibition of marijuana has always been shot through, replete with racist policies from the federal government. Among the other claims in the lawsuits, retired professional football player and Super Bowl champion Marvin Washington, who desires, but is ineligible due to the CSA, to obtain grants under the Federal Minority Business Enterprise Program to obtain a business that would allow professional football players, among others, to treat themselves with medical cannabis to reduce opioid dependency and addiction. Now, isn't that interesting? The story has been floating around on the sidebar. I don't actually have it on my stack today. You know, it probably takes a good bit for sports ball stories to make their ways into the media monarchy. But let's see if I can find it on the front page. Oh, nope, that sound means bloop. It's not there on the breaking lamestream news. But the story's been floating around these last couple of days. Hundreds of NFL heads. Yeah, 99% of deceased NFL players in one new study had CTE. They all have massive concussions, massive brain damage. So I'll add that to the stack. As we approach the start of another NFL season, an important study published in the Journal of American Medicine should make all parents and current and former players take notice, not to mention the NFL itself. The finding was rather striking. 100 out of 111 deceased players had evidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease associated with repetitive head trauma. 99% of former NFL players all had head trauma. Now, this actually relates, I think, in some ways to what Chuck Klosterman's talking about in his latest book, But What If We're Wrong? The possibility that American football, as we know it, could completely disappear. So I think I've tried to front-load this episode with a little bit of positive news, as opposed to, just not the breaking news that we had there at the top. But, suing Jeff Sessions, I think, is a great way to start off this episode. Another little bit of good news. At a climate-controlled indoor facility in Newark, New Jersey, crops are stacked 30 feet high in a 30,000 square foot environment. The style of grow is called aeroponic and involves misting the roots with nutritious water, spraying them rather than soaking them. Because they are sprayed with a light mist, they are better oxygenated, and the crops can be grown using 95% less water than outdoor agriculture. A game changer, and we can all build one.
You can't see it on the outside, but this old industrial neighborhood is an agricultural oasis. Inside this former laser tag arena, about 250 kinds of leafy greens are growing in huge quantities to be sold to local supermarkets and restaurants. This is Aero Farms, a massive indoor vertical farm in Newark, New Jersey.
Our mission is to build farms in cities all over the world so people have access to fresh, great tasting, highly nutritious food.
Crops are stacked more than 30 feet high inside this 30,000 square foot space. They're grown using aeroponic technology.
Typically in indoor growing, the roots sit in water and one tries to oxygenate the water. Our key inventor realized that if we missed nutrition to the root structure, then the roots have a better oxygenation.
AeroFarm says the root misting system allows them to use 95% less water than a regular field farm. They also use no pesticides or herbicides. Instead of soil, plants are grown in reusable cloth made from recycled plastic. And instead of the sun, there are rows and rows of specialized LED lighting.
A lot of people say, sunless, wait, plants need sun. In fact, the plants don't need yellow spectrum, so we're able to reduce our energy footprint by doing things like reducing certain types of spectrum.
This sophisticated climate-controlled system cuts the growing cycle in half, so crops can be grown all year round, but with a much smaller impact on the environment.
There's all these stresses on our planet. 70% of our freshwater contamination comes from agriculture. About 70% of our freshwater usage goes to agriculture. 1/3 of our arable land has been degraded in the last 40 years. All these macro trends point to the fact that we need a new way to feed our planet.
One of the early champions of vertical farming is Columbia University ecologist Dixon DePommier. In 1999, DePommier and his students proposed that vertical farms could feed overpopulated cities while using less land and less water. They would also cut greenhouse gases by eliminating the need to transport food over long distances. And the idea is finally taking root. Over the past few years, vertical farms have sprouted all over the world, including in Vancouver, Singapore, Panama, the UK, and around the US. Here in Newark, AeroFarms is building out another new farm in a former steel mill, one that's bigger than a football field. Once it's fully operational, it's expected to produce 2 million pounds of greens a year, all grown vertically.
We listen to the plants very carefully to try and understand what they're telling us and try and optimize all these different qualities of a plant. It's a tough business, but it's one that's going to stay and it's going to have a bigger and bigger impact.
Do you think vertical farms will help solve our food production problems? Let us know in the comments below. And check out this next episode.
Yo. I don't need your shilling. I just want you to tell me about the Newark farm building. It should come as no surprise that all of this technology has been around for a long, long time. We're just finally figuring out that we might need to use this in certain situations. And the question's in the chat, how long until this is bought up by Monsanto? I live in the Midwest. Put seeds in the ground, food grows out. Yeah, but for the rest of the world, and again, remember, America is New York and LA. The compact urban sprawls that everyone's being forced into. You can do all these things anywhere, everywhere. And you can grow your own food. In a lot of ways, the powers that shouldn't be are trying to present ancient ideas as new solutions to the problems they've caused in the first place. Something else you miss out on a little bit of this is that you don't get your hands in the dirt. How many times have we talked about on these episodes, as well as good news next week? You need your hands, fingers in the dirt, in the minerals, in the soil. One good turn deserves another. The world's first full-scale floating wind farm has started to take shape off the coast of Scotland, the northeast coast of Scotland to be precise. The revolutionary technology will allow wind power to be harvested in waters too deep for the current conventional bottom-standing turbines. The Peterhead wind farm, known as Hywind, Hywind, is a trial which will bring power to 20,000 homes. Manufacturer Statoil says output from the turbines is expected to equal or surpass generation from current ones. It hopes to cash in on a boom in the technology, especially in Japan and the west coast of the U.S., where the waters are deep. This is a tech development project to ensure it's working in open sea conditions. It's a game changer for floating wind power, and we are sure it will help bring costs down, said Leif Delp, project director for Hywind. So far, one giant turbine has already been moved into place, while 4 more wait in readiness in a Norwegian fjord. I don't get to say fjord on these shows very often. By the end of the month, they'll all have been towed to 15 miles off Peterhead, Aberdeenshire, while they'll float upright like giant fishing floats. While the turbines are currently very expensive to make, Statoil believes that in the future it'll be able to dramatically reduce costs in the same way that manufacturers already have for conventional offshore turbines. I think eventually we'll see floating wind farms complete without subsidy, but to do that, we need to get big. But to do that, we need to get building at scale. Good Lord. How about worm farms in the desert? So the state owns the wind and the water. That's how that's going to work for you. You are listening to Your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, Hump Day, July 26, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com, coming to you, as always, from the Media Monarchy studios up here in what I like to call peak Portland, as in it has achieved peak Portland-esque-ness. And let's look around the world at our other food, health, and environment news. The worst ever outbreak of dengue fever has killed nearly 300 people in Sri Lanka, with aid agencies warning against the further spread of the mosquito-borne viral disease.
Alicia Fernando and her sister Hashini are being tested for dengue. With a neighborhood full of patients and the girls getting fever, their parents are not taking any chances.
Dengue is spreading fast in our area, and we're afraid because they got fever, so we came.
Sushal's concerns are shared by thousands of Sri Lankans, like those visiting this military-run lab set up in a local church.
We have been assisting the hospitals by constructing temporary wards and providing manpower and setting up laboratories like this.
Soldiers have been deployed to help with efforts to contain the outbreak. More than 72,000 people have been infected with the mosquito-borne virus so far this year. 215 have died. Government hospitals in the worst affected areas like the Colombo South Teaching Hospital are already at bursting point, some with 2 patients to a bed and others waiting in corridors. Private hospitals are also struggling to cope. It's past 9 p.m. and Dr. Priyanka Rajayawardena has just arrived at Asiri Hospital for his evening rounds. It's the hemorrhagic patients who are the concern.
Usually, traditionally, we think when you get 10,000 patients of dengue, we thought only 100 go to this category. But this time we see lots of patients with leakage. I think that our calculation may be wrong. We have to think that we have to expect more serious patients with this epidemic.
Critics point to a garbage crisis in the capital Colombo that's led to breeding grounds for mosquitoes. But the city's chief medical officer says people need to do more to protect themselves.
The biggest challenge, people do not look after their own backyards and also their own households.
Inspection teams have been cracking down on offenders in recent weeks. Those found with mosquito breeding grounds must pay fines or face prosecution. While this activity helps, a leading authority on dengue says a new strain of the virus is to blame.
We are a population that has been exposed to dengue virus. Therefore, our population, when they get the dengue virus with a new strain, because they are not immune to, then their chance of developing severe disease is high.
Despite the high number of infections, Sri Lanka has a low mortality rate among countries with hemorrhagic fever. But authorities say they are bracing for the worst in July, when infections tend to peak. Binay Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
The Sri Lankan Red Cross Society and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society said Monday they were scaling up emergency assistance to the island nation as the number of dengue cases topped 100,000. Dengue patients are streaming into overcrowded hospitals that are stretched beyond capacity and struggling to cope, particularly in the country's hardest-hit western province, Red Cross Red Crescent had said in a statement. Red Cross announced it was increasing its budget by $300,000 to cope with the unprecedented outbreak. Ministry of Health said the number of dengue infections had climbed above 100,000 since the start of 2017, with 296 deaths. So actually, that clip goes when they were just at 225. And the article update has us at 300. Government and aid agencies scale up efforts as hospitals overflow with patients. Can you just spray the virus away? Can you tax the mosquitoes? Maybe put people in jail. That always helps, right? Let's head back to jail, shall we? We had that new execution in Ohio at the top of this episode, but let's head to Tennessee. where Tennessee County inmates get reduced jail time for getting any guesses? Vasectomy. Yep, that's right. Inmates in White County, Tennessee can shave 30 whole days off their jail sentence if they undergo an elective birth control procedure. Both male and female inmates can volunteer for the new program. Women receive Nexplanon implant in their arm, which provides up to 3 years of continuous birth control. Men undergo vasectomy. The procedures are free and conducted by the Tennessee Department of Health. And isn't it so nice? We've been seeing this day after day. That Wisconsin company that's implanting all their employees with microchips so they can buy poison garbage potato chips and use the copy machine. They'll pay for it. Don't worry. In this kind of situation, no biggie. We'll pay for it. Because it's a small price to pay in the beginning, right? General Sessions Judge Sam Benningfield signed a standing order on May 15th enforcing the program. I hope to encourage them to take personal responsibility and give them a chance when they do get out not to be burdened with children. Because children just poof, oh, hey, look, kids, they just happen, right? This gives them the chance to get on their feet and make something of themselves. Since the program started, 32 women and 38 men have volunteered. The men are currently waiting to have the vasectomies performed. I understand it won't be entirely successful, but if you reach 2 or 3 people, maybe that's 2 or 3 kids not being born under the influence of drugs. I see it as a win-win, Benningfield says. Not everyone is enthusiastic about the idea. However, District Attorney Bryant Dunaway and the ACLU are speaking against the ethics and legality of it. Those decisions are personal in nature, and I think that's just something the court system should not encourage or mandate, Dunaway told WTVF. He's instructed his staff not to make any arrangements involving the birth control program, offering a so-called choice between jail time and coerced contraception or sterilization is unconstitutional, said Heidi Weinberg, ACLU Tennessee executive director, in a statement. Judges play an important role in our community. Overseeing individuals' childbearing capacity should not be part of that role, except it always has been. Remember Tomorrow's Children? Remember that exploitation film? All about the eugenics operations? And where, we say it again and again and again, where did the Nazis get their eugenics ideas? Golly gee, where did they come up with all that stuff? They got it from Maggie Sanger. Ecoscience is real. John P. Holdren, Paul Ehrlich, as is noted in the chat. I mean, remember? Paul Ehrlich writes the intro to the book Make Room, which they turned into the film Soylent Green. Let's continue to look at your food, health, and environment news all around the world. And yeah, it does. It sounds like old California eugenics program. All these things that sound very new, again, are all old ideas. Ooh, hydroponic farming. We just invented it. Now let's have some fun. I don't know what's in your coffee, but I like to keep mine organic and local and decaffeinated. But a Texas coffee company is recalling one of its roasts because it was making some men a bit too excited. Best Herbs Coffee, LLC, issued the voluntary recall for its new of Kopi Jantan traditional natural herbs coffee after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration found that it contained desmethylcarbonidinafil. Desmethylcarbonidinafil, which is similar to sildenafil in the erectile dysfunction drug Viagra.
A Texas-based coffee company voluntarily recalls coffee containing an ingredient similar to what's in the erectile dysfunction drug Viagra, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced, after an FDA laboratory confirmed the presence of the chemical compound in the grounds. Best Herbs Coffee LLC recalled all new Kopi Jantan traditional natural herbs coffee. The undeclared ingredient may interact with nitrates found in some prescription drugs, such as nitroglycerin, and may lower blood pressure to dangerous levels. The coffee also contains undeclared milk, the recall announcement said. People who have an allergy or severe sensitivity to milk run the risk of a serious or life-threatening allergic reaction if they consume the product. The instant coffee was promoted as a male enhancement product and sold online nationwide from July 2014 through June 2016.
This is a great reminder. Remember that the word natural means nothing. It has no legal standing. And yes, unfortunately, the organic standard has been lowered and has been systematically destroyed by the powers that shouldn't be, by the USDA, by the FDA. But this is a good reminder. Natural means nothing. Oh, it's natural herbs filled with dis-desmethylcarbidinafil. Best Herbs, which is based in the Dallas suburb of Grand Prairie, sold the coffee nationwide from July 2014 through June 2016 on various websites and in some retail stores. Albert Yee, who identified himself as the product importer, said he didn't know how much of the product was recalled after distros stopped more than a year ago. Some customers were buying it to help in the bedroom, but FDA spokeswoman Lindsay Mayer said it's not clear if the product works like Viagra. No injuries have been reported, but the FDA says the undeclared ingredient could interact with prescription medicine and lower blood pressure to dangerous levels. See, this is the hilarious thing. Actually having a boner for a while is not that big of a problem. It's when it starts to interfere with all the other pharmaceutical poisons we've got you on. There's the problem. The product also contains undeclared milk, which could cause a life-threatening reaction to consumers with milk allergies. The FDA advised customers not to purchase the coffee last year because of the Viagra-like ingredient, which of course probably meant people really wanted to buy the ingredient. The notification was intended to inform the public of foods with hidden drugs and chemicals that are often represented as a natural way to promote sexual enhancement, weight loss, and bodybuilding, according to the FDA warning. Best Herbs is notifying customers of the recall and offering a full refund for products returned by mail. So is there any way we can buy more of this on Amazon? We can stack it right next to our Coco Loco, the snortable chocolate we were talking about recently. Because as soon as all these moral panics pop up, as they inevitably do, all these things get banned. And again, remember, Pharma World is okay. They can rock out all kinds of drugs that kill all kinds of people, and they never have to worry about going to court for it. They're completely immune from all of it. Think about McDonald's ice cream. Think about the cigarettes. Think about all that garbage. All that stuff's legal. All that stuff's legal, but they want to protect you from yourself. And a lot of times, to me, what it seems like, it almost seems the same way with the crackdown on meth. Why the huge crackdown on meth? Is it because you could totally make it yourself and it cuts out the big pharma powers that shouldn't be? Not endorsing meth by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a pretty DIY drug. Much like weed. We follow week in, week out, all the sellout companies, and it happened a long-ass time ago. Ben & Jerry's sold out to Unilever, I won't say decades ago, years and years ago. So let's hop to the old gray lady, which occasionally, like a broken clock, can be right a couple times a day. A growing number of foods commonly found in kitchens across America have tested positive for glyphosate, the herbicide that is the main ingredient in the weed killer Roundup, which is widely used in agriculture. But few brands on that list are as startling as the latest. Ben & Jerry's, the Vermont ice cream company known for its family-friendly image and environmental advocacy. The Organic Consumers Association announced yesterday, July 25th, that it found traces of glyphosate in 10 of 11 samples of the company's ice creams, although at levels far below the ceiling set by our friends at the EPA. Rob Michalak, Global Director of Social Mission at Ben & Jerry's, said the company was working to ensure that all the ingredients in its supply chain come from sources that do not include genetically modified organisms, known as GMOs. None of its plant-based ingredients, for instance, come from a genetically engineered crop like corn or soy, where glyphosate is used in production. The company's also trying to figure out a cost-effective way for the dairy farms that supply its milk to use non-GMO feed. We're working to transition away from GMO as far as we can get, but then these tests come along, and we need to better understand where the glyphosate they're finding is coming from. Maybe it's from something that's not even in our supply chain, and so we're missing it. Consumer groups around the country, including the Organic Consumers Association, have begun raising awareness of glyphosate in food because some studies have linked it to a variety of diseases. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, a unit of the World Health Organization, declared this year that it probably could cause some cancers. The agency reviewed scientific studies involving people, lab animals, and cells to assess whether glyphosate might cause cancer. Monsanto and other companies that make products containing glyphosate hotly dispute these studies and say there's no reason for concern because all the institutions that they paid off to do research all say it's cool. Government and other regulators tend to agree that very low levels are not harmful to humans. It's like the George Carlin joke. The scientists have just discovered that saliva causes cancer, but only when swallowed in small amounts over a long period of time. Ronnie Cummins, founder and international director of the Organic Consumers Association, said the amount found in Ben & Jerry's ice cream wouldn't violate any regulations. Not everyone agrees with the acceptable levels governments have set, Cummins said, and anyway, would you want to be eating this stuff at all? It's far from clear. Divergent findings over glyphosate's effect on health have divided governments, scientists, regulators, and even the World Health Organization with its International Agency for Research on Cancer, linking it to cancer, and another unit of the organization insisting on its safety. The levels of glyphosate found in Ben & Jerry's ice creams are indeed small, according to government regulators and the scientists who did the testing. Among the flavors tested, Ben & Jerry's chocolate fudge brownie showed the highest levels of glyphosate, with 1.74 parts per billion, and glyphosate's byproduct, holy moly, that's a long word, aminomethylphosphonic acid registering 0.91 parts per billion. I really appreciate y'all being in the chat, because it puts a lot of the things into perspective, because I can glance over and just see, the glyphosate is coming from inside the house. That's the warning. If this were a horror film, that's what they would be calling up to say. You're the source of it. You're not going to be able to stop it. Once you sold out, you lost all your ability to stop this. Sorry. Let's continue to look at places and things and items and sources that we should probably not have in our lives. With at least 135 customers of a Virginia Chipotle Mexican grill reporting they became ill after eating there July 13th through the 16th, the corporation is said to be taking care of the victims. Now, we watch gangster movies. We know what that means when they say you're going to take care of something. Health director reports Chipotle employees were infected. Employees continue to work at the Virginia Chipotle even though they were infected. Just a little bit of norovirus.
But I felt bad for you this morning when you upgraded it just before this news broke. I mean, what did you think? A lot of people thought that this company had finally gotten their hands around the supply chain. When you see this news, does it make you think, oh my gosh, here we go all over again?
It's interesting you mentioned what happened with the norovirus outbreak in Northern Virginia. What's most likely to be a case is that it may have been a case where either an employee or maybe even another customer may have spread the virus within that restaurant. The good news is that management did catch this early. They closed the restaurant last night. They reopened the restaurant as of 2 o'clock this afternoon. So in our view, this is the typical protocol of what the company is doing in case of an outbreak like this. Norovirus, not all that uncommon among restaurants. What separates this from the E. coli outbreak late in 2015 rather, is that that was caused by problems in the supply chain. Norovirus, that typically is not the case.
Okay, so you're confident it doesn't necessarily spread. So
it does not change our view.
Queso, tell me why you would upgrade the stock based on the new queso product.
Well, let me just say, as a backdrop, we had been negative for much of 2016 on Chipotle, based on the fact that they would have to cut margins and get very promotional. That hasn't been the case since the turn of this year. And if the company can continue to generate full margin sales, I think it will get past this crisis. What's interesting with the testing of queso is this is a new product for Chipotle, and your previous guest talked about having new and improved products, and this is a new and improved way of getting queso. Chipotle hasn't had it, but peers in the fast casual Mexican space like Qdoba and Moe's have had it for years. Chipotle's does not have any
are the margins
ingredients.
A lot better? I mean, was that the point in your note when you said it's a non-protein item, that the margins would be better for queso?
We believe so.
And add to margins overall?
We believe so. And it not only is a non-protein item, but it's also an add-on item, much in the same way that guacamole is an add-on item. But as we've seen in recent quarters, guacamole has, avocados have seen more volatile pricing, and dairy has not seen that volatile pricing, so at least it gives a little bit more earnings and margin visibility, and particularly we think there could even be an increase in traffic just out of curiosity over that as it gets rolled out in
just
18.
Driven by the cheese. Okay,
yes, it's not 17 catalysts, but 18 and 2018 catalysts.
Good God. That's enough not to really go anywhere. I mean, much like yesterday's episode of Cyberspace War, where we looked at all the technology news. One of our huge technology friends even followed up with a comment saying, this episode made me even more paranoid. Now, I'm not trying to make you paranoid. I'm not a fear monger. I'm not a fear porn. I'm not a rah, 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 be afraid, and then buy my product. I just think these are important things to know. We're surrounded by all these things. I'm not on a farm yet. Cass and I are city kids. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I've probably eaten at Chipotle twice. There was once where somehow I think I had a coupon that was literally just free burrito, and I think this was when they were trying to recover from the last big outbreak and massive public relations disasters they were having. So they gave out these free burrito coupons. So of course I'm going to cash in a free burrito. I think the only other time I've eaten at a Chipotle was when Cassie and I were on the road with my parents, and it was pretty much the only fast food place on the side of the road that Cassie and I would agree to eat at. People infected with norovirus usually develop symptoms 12 to 48 hours after being exposed to norovirus, and most people who are ill get better within 1 to 3 days, according to the Center for Disease Creation. Frequent hand washing and staying home when sick are two of the most important means of preventing the spread of the virus. The string of outbreaks that plagued Chipotle at locations throughout the country during the last half of 2015 included Seattle, Simi Valley, Minnesota, California, Delaware, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Washington, and Kansas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. To add insult to pukey injury, of course, their stock is also taking a dump, so to speak. Now, what do you do when you're in the news for horrible, horrible things? Your food is terrible, it's making people sick, and it's just another bad notch in your public relations scheme. You team up with the RZA. Exactly, you got it, good job. Anyone who's ever dreamed of what their regular Chipotle order sounds like is in for some serious luck, as the burrito-making chain has teamed up with the spiritual guru behind the Wu-Tang Clan for a never-before-heard experience. Chipotle embarks on their first musical endeavor, an immersive musical journey of its 51 ingredients. Can you believe this? They actually have an entire 2-minute video, whereas each ingredient has a sound. So the RZA basically stands over these bits, these plates, as though he's playing the plates. So when his hands go over him. Ooh, avocado. Sounds like this. The company's latest announcement, Savor Waves, it's actually savor.waves, is a collaborative experience where the users build the Chipotle item of their choice. As the order comes together and the user selects their items of choice on their pseudo Chipotle order, RZA-produced elements represent the different items of the user's mix. Some dank bass lines coincide with the black beans, percussion fills in for the soft tacos, and of course, Spanish guitar for the sofritas. Every food has its own unique RZA-produced sound, and every mix is a result unique to the user's taste. Once the listener is finished creating their masterpiece, the mix is sent to a visualizer where it plays through. At the very end, Chipotle even sends users a code for a one-time buy one, get one free deal. While it may be a PR stunt, free Chipotle is just that, delicious and cost-free. Add unique user-made mixes, and it's a pretty sweet deal. So this article is coming from some website called dancingastronaut.com, but of course it reads pretty much like a press release. At which point they say, in the launch's press release, Chipotle's Chief Marketing and Development Officer had the following to say. Savor Waves supports our commitment to using only real ingredients in our food without any colors, flavors, or industrial additives. As a parallel to the way we cook, RZA used only natural instruments and composed them such that each unique combination works beautifully together, said Mark Crumpacker. Chipotle's 51 items are all available for a listener over on the company's SoundCloud page. Very, very strange. Chipotle embarks on their first musical endeavor. Now, I actually did cut out and edit that entire 2-minute long clip. Hey, we might play that on our daily DJ set at noon. It's a little 2-minute instrumental thing. How about we wrap up this Food World Order edition of Your Morning Monarchy with a little more positive news? And it's all about the power of positive thinking. Would you say you are physically more active, less active, or about equally as active as other people your age? Your answer might be linked to your risk of premature death decades from now, no matter how physically active you actually are. This, according to research by Stanford scholars Octavia Zart and Alia Crum. The research, appearing in the July 20th issue of Health Psychology, finds that people who think they are less active than others in a similar age bracket die younger than those who believe they are more active, even if their actual activity levels are similar. Our findings fall in line with a growing body of research suggesting that our mindsets, in this case, beliefs about how much exercise we are getting relative to others, can play a crucial role in our health. By the way, you're all going to die. That's what St. Carlin said. Crum, an assistant professor of psychology, and Zart, a doctoral candidate at the Graduate School of Business, analyzed surveys from more than 60,000 U.S. adults and from 3 national data sets. The surveys documented participants' levels of physical activity, health, and personal background, among other measures. In one of the samples, participants wore an accelerometer to measure their activity over the week. But it all came down to that main question I said at the beginning. Would you say that you are physically more active, less active, or about as active as other persons your age? Perceiving oneself as less physically active than one's peers is linked to a shorter lifespan. Now, some might say, if you believe that, they also have a bridge for sale. But I'll let you decide. Those are all your food, health, and environment stories. And again, everything we say and play always included in the show notes. If you've got stories, you can always tweet them out using hashtag FoodWorldOrder. If you are not on the tweets, of course, always love to hear from you. James@MediaMonarchy.com. I love to hear follow-up stories. It's not uncommon for me to get emails from people saying, you could probably have explained that story a little bit wider. Here's some of the extras. Here's some of the context and subtext. And I appreciate that. I'm not the greatest at this. I do an hour of live radio in the morning, and it is breaking, and it is live, and it is brought to you by you. And like we say, like our buddy Richard Grove, trying to learn our way forward. We're going to wrap up this episode with a band that comes from where they describe as the middle of nowhere. But it's actually Springfield, Missouri, and they call themselves Dream Ritual, and we've got them coming up after this day in history. July 26th, 1938. A swarm of grasshoppers descends on crops throughout the American heartland, devastating millions of acres. Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, already in the midst of a bad drought, suffered tremendously from this disaster. It's an interesting story entry on Wikipedia for this day in 1938 that has no other links or supplemental stories to it. It's just a swarm of grasshoppers on this day. July 26, 1947, one of the darkest days. And one of the days we mention often, not so much because of the day, but because of what was signed. U.S. President Harry S. Truman on this day, July 26, 1947, signs the National Security Act of 1947 into United States law, creating the Central Intelligence Agency, the United States Department of Defense, United States Air Force, Joint Chiefs of Staff, United States National Security Council, National Security Agency. On and on and on. Why don't you drain that swamp there, phony Trump train? 1 year later, July 26, 1948, U.S. President Harry S. Truman signs Executive Order 9981, desegregating the military of the United States. So hey, like that for a little bit of synchronicities from Truman to Trump. Desegregation to transgender ban. Past is prologue. July 26th, 1951, Walt Disney's 13th animated film Alice in Wonderland premiered in London, England on this day. July 26, 1956, following the World Bank's refusal to fund building the Aswan Dam, Egyptian leader Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalizes the Suez Canal, sparking international condemnation. July 26, 1963, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, votes to admit Japan. July 26, 1979, The Clash released their first U.S. single. Anybody remember what the first U.S. single from The Clash was? It was a remake. It was a cover of Bobby Fuller Fuller's I Fought the Law. July 26, 1984, Prince's Purple Rain premiered in Hollywood on this day. And on July 26, 1989, a federal grand jury indicts Cornell University student Robert T. Morris Jr. for releasing the Morris worm, thus becoming the first person to be prosecuted under the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Here is an unbelievable, melodramatic, over-the-top piece from Boston News in 1988.
Life in the modern world has a new anxiety these days. Just as we've become totally dependent on our computers, they're being stalked by saboteurs. Saboteurs who create computer viruses. The Defense Department, universities, and research centers are still recovering tonight from a computer virus that brought a nationwide network to a standstill. One of the institution's hardest hit was MIT. David Boeri reports.
It was first spotted at NASA Ames and Rand.
It came from California, maybe, traveled by electronic mail. It spread across America.
How insidious was this virus?
Well, it spread very quickly. There are reports in newspapers today that it has made its way to Europe and to Australia.
It arrived at MIT in the middle of the night. The students were safe. Their computers weren't.
Just ran. It would enter your machine, it would do its thing, it would go to other machines.
At MIT, 200 computers were infected. Across the country, the toll might be 6,000. It could have been worse.
We believe it was intended to spread more slowly than it did so that it wouldn't be noticed as quickly, which would actually have been more insidious if it spread out to a large number of machines and, say, held a surprise and did something.
Mark Eichen, student and part-time virus hunter.
Once we had it stopped, we were able to take it apart, sort of like dissect it and tear it apart piece by piece.
These three processes right here, these three programs, the SH with the parens around them, are in fact copies of the virus that are running there.
It's not really a virus, it's a code, a set of instructions, an act of sabotage that started on a floppy disk. This virus spreads by disk and by telephone. It's just a call away. And like a virus, it replicates like crazy.
Look at this, and look at this, and look at this.
And as it replicates the code, the so-called virus eats up large amounts of memory. It wipes out stored data or cripples the hardware. This virus clogged a system linking thousands of computers, but apparently did no damage.
It's benign. It's not malicious. It attempts to do no damage besides propagate itself. And that's why I think it's a warning.
The suspect? Somewhere. A dark genius.
I suspect it's an A student. A good A student.
So lost computer time, but no files destroyed. Just a thrill for the virus hunters and a warning.
My personal speculation is that this is somebody who is trying to warn people to say, it can happen to you.
Mr. President, we have not even been able to isolate the cause. The virus, if it is a virus, is like the common cold. It is everywhere, it is nowhere.
For the 10 o'clock news, I'm David Boeri.
Overly melodramatic and cheesy Boston TV channel news report about a computer virus outbreak discovered by MIT nerds. Fun because they don't just report on the virus, they interview geeks, insert random clips from retro video games and TV movies to illustrate what a virus is. This was 1988. The Morris worm was out, but they hadn't actually busted Robert T. Morris yet. So that clip is definitely worth watching, and of course, out of all the terrible things that the Morris worm did, if I'm to believe that clip, it'll also mess up your awesome game of E.T. on the 2600. That's what those sound effects were. If they were registering any flashbacks for anybody out there. Continuing to look at this day in history, July 26, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 is signed into law by President George H.W. Bush. July 26, 2000, a U.S. federal judge issued a preliminary injunction against Napster. The injunction had been requested, of course, by the Recording Industry Association of America. The website was ordered to cease trade in music covered by RIAA member copyrights by midnight, July 28, 2000. You got 2 days. July 26, 2005, Space Shuttle Program STS-114 mission. That would be the launch of Discovery, NASA's first scheduled flight mission after the Columbia disaster in 2003. And finally, what a banner day in history. July 26, 2016, Hillary Clinton becomes the first female nominee for the President of the United States by a major political party at the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. And like Dinah says, what a difference a year makes. I paraphrase. Published to MediaMonarchy.com a decade ago today, a Live Leak exclusive interview with Ron Paul, exclusively for LiveLeak.com. And probably one of my most popular YouTube uploads, Oregon police terrorize children in the name of safety. That's right, shooter drills at schools that teach your kids how to be a little slave and flop around on the ground and grovel for the cops to come save them. Unauthorized Christians United for Israel tour. It's Armageddon time. After attending the College Republican Convention, Nation journalist Max Blumenthal took his camera to Christians United for Israel. And the fourth and final story published in Media Monarchy a decade ago today, hero 9/11 rescue dog dies of cancer. Wow, what a list of birthdays today. July 26th, get a load of this. George Clinton. Now, not the king of funk, but American general and politician and our fourth vice president of the United States, George Clinton, born on this day. It's also George Bernard Shaw's birthday, Carl Jung, Aldous Huxley. It's also Gracie Allen's birthday, Vivian Vance, Gene Shepard, Blake Edwards, Jason Robards, Stanley Kubrick, Dobie Gray, Darlene Love, Peter Hyams, director you might know from Capricorn 1, Mick Jagger, Betty Davis, Helen Mirren, Roger Taylor from Queen, Kevin Spacey, Gary Cherone from Extreme, Sandra Bullock, Jeremy Piven, Jason Statham, Kate Beckinsale, and Sam Beam, a.k.a. Iron and Wine. I could probably make a daily DJ set at noon filling just from those songs. You get your morning monarchy and your pump up the volume into wet your whistle for your daily DJ set at noon. Let's wrap up this pump up the volume with Dream Ritual. They identify as a band from the middle of nowhere. Actually, they are from Springfield, Missouri, and they play a version of hard rock you might describe as kind of grungy. And they play it pretty well, too. They've got a summer promo tape that is out, a 3-track EP, and we're going to hear a little song called Noise from Dream Ritual as we wrap up your Hump Day Morning Monarchy. Again, this is all brought to you by you. I've been online for nearly 12 years, thanks to all of your support at MediaMonarchy.com/support. That's the Hump Day Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, July 26, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for listening, and reminding you, as always, my friends, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.